I've spent the better part of my life watching people make money and watching people lose money, and I can tell you something that might surprise you. The folks who stay poor their entire lives aren't usually poor because they don't earn enough. They're poor because they buy the wrong things over and over again without ever stopping to think about what those purchases are really costing them. It's not dramatic. It's not a single catastrophic mistake. It's the quiet, everyday decisions that feel completely normal, that everyone around them is making too, that slowly drain away any chance they might have had at building real wealth. And the tragedy is most people never realize it's happening until it's too late, until they're 65 years old wondering why they're still working, still worried about money, still one emergency away from financial disaster. I've seen this pattern repeat itself thousands of times in people from every walk of life, and it always starts the same way. It starts with buying things that society tells you are perfectly reasonable, things that make you feel successful or comfortable or like you belong, but things that are actually working against you every single day you own them. Let's talk about the automobile for a moment, because this is where I see more wealth destroyed than almost anywhere else, and nobody seems to notice. Now, I'm not saying you don't need a car. If you need transportation to get to work, that's perfectly sensible. But somewhere along the way, we stopped thinking about cars as transportation and started thinking about them as extensions of our identity, as proof of our success, as something we deserve to reward ourselves with. And that shift in thinking, that subtle change in how we view this purchase, cost people fortunes over a lifetime. Here's what actually happens when you buy a new car. The moment you drive it off the lot, you lose somewhere between 15 and 20% of what you just paid. Just like that, before you even get home. That's not an investment. That's not an asset building value. That's your wealth evaporating into thin air, and you haven't even made your first payment yet. But it gets worse because most people don't buy cars with cash anymore. They finance them. They take out a 5-year loan, sometimes 6 or 7 years now, paying interest on something that's losing value every single month. Think about that for a second. You're paying extra money in the form of interest for the privilege of owning something that's worth less tomorrow than it is today. Let's put some real numbers to this so you can see what I mean. Say you buy a $35,000 car, which is right around the average new car price these days. You put down $3,000, you finance $32,000 at 6% interest over 5 years. Your monthly payment is going to be around $620. Over those 5 years, you'll pay nearly $37,000 total for that car. But here's the part that really matters. After 5 years, that car is worth maybe $15,000 if you're lucky. You put $37,000 into something worth $15,000. You've lost $22,000. Now, you might say, well, I needed a car. I needed transportation, and you're right. But did you need a $35,000 car? What if you'd bought a $10,000 used car instead, something reliable, something that gets you from point A to point B just as effectively? You'd have saved $27,000 over those 5 years. And here's where it gets really interesting, where you can see the true cost of that decision. If you took that difference, that $540 a month you not spending on a car payment, and you invested it in a simple index fund, earning 10% annually, which is right around the historical average of the stock market, after 30 years, you'd have over $1 million. $1 million from just this one decision, from choosing transportation over status. But people don't think this way. They think about what they can afford monthly. They think about how the car makes them feel. They think about what their neighbors are driving, what their coworkers will think when they pull into the parking lot. I understand that. I understand the psychology. We're social creatures. We want to fit in. We want to feel successful. But you have to ask yourself what you want more, the feeling of looking successful now or the reality of being financially secure later, because you can't have both, not on an average income. The math simply doesn't work. And this isn't just about cars. This same pattern, this same mistake shows up in how people think about where they live. And this might be even more damaging because the numbers are so much larger. There's this idea that's been planted in people's minds that owning a home is always a good investment, that you're throwing money away if you rent, that you should buy as much house as the bank will lend you money for. And I've watched this idea ruin people financially, not because home ownership itself is bad, but because they buy the wrong house for the wrong reasons at the wrong price. The real estate industry, the banks, they've done a masterful job of convincing people that they should spend roughly a third of their income on housing. Think about that for a moment. A third of everything you earn before taxes going to one expense. And people accept this as normal. They accept it as responsible, but it's not responsible. It's a trap. Because when you're spending a third of your gross income on housing, you're probably spending 40% or more of your take-home pay on housing. That means before you've bought food, before you've paid for transportation, before you've handled any other expense in your life, almost half your money is already gone. And there's nothing left to save. There's nothing left to invest. There's nothing left to build wealth with. Let me give you an example of how this plays out. Two people, same age, same income. Let's say they make $70,000 a year. Person A buys a house at the top of what they can afford, $350,000. They put down 5% because that's all they have saved. They take out a 30-year mortgage at 7%. Their monthly payment is going to be about $2,300. Person B decides differently. They buy a house for $200,000, something smaller, something modest in a neighborhood that's not quite as impressive. Same down payment percentage, same interest rate. Their monthly payment is about $1,300. That's a $1,000 difference every single month. Person A is house poor. They can make the payment, but there's nothing left over. They're stressed. They can't handle unexpected expenses. They're not saving for retirement. They're trapped. Person B has $1,000 a month they can do something with. If they invest that $1,000 a month at 10% annually, in 30 years, they'll have nearly $2 million. $2 million. And they still own a house. They still have shelter. They still have a perfectly comfortable life. They just weren't trying to impress anyone with their address. But here's what really happens in real life. Person A not only has the bigger payment, but they furnish that bigger house with more expensive furniture because they want it to match the house. They have higher utility bills because there's more space to heat and cool. They have higher property taxes, higher insurance, higher maintenance costs. Everything about the bigger house costs more, month after month, year after year. When you add it all up, when you look at what they actually paid for that house over 30 years, including interest, they didn't pay $350,000. They paid over $800,000 for a house that might be worth $500,000 if they're lucky. Meanwhile, person B paid less than $500,000 total for their $200,000 house. It's worth $300,000 now, and they have $2 million in investments. One person has net worth of maybe $2.5 million. The other, if everything went well, might have $200,000 in equity. That's the difference. That's what choosing status over substance costs you. And this brings me to something I see destroying wealth every single day. Something so accepted and so normal that people don't even think about it anymore. I'm talking about the brand new smartphone every year, R2, the latest laptop, the newest tablet, the upgraded television, the whole ecosystem of consumer electronics that people feel they need to stay current. Now, I'm not some old man yelling at clouds here. Technology is wonderful. It's changed the world. But the way people consume technology, the way they feel they need the latest version of everything the moment it comes out, it's financially devastating over time. A new iPhone costs $1,200 now, $1,500 if you want the premium version. And people are replacing these every 18 months to 2 years. Let's say you do this from age 25 to age 65. That's 40 years. If you're spending $1,200 every 2 years on phones, that's $24,000 over your lifetime. And that's conservative because prices keep going up. But here's the real cost. If instead of spending that $1,200 every 2 years, you bought a $300 phone that works perfectly fine for the same 2 years, and you invested the $900 difference, doing this every 2 years for 40 years at 10% annual return, you'd have nearly $250,000 top bar. ROM, just phones, just that one category of electronics. Now add in computers, add in tablets, add in televisions and gaming consoles and smart watches and all the other devices we're told we need to have. Most people are spending several $1,000s a year on consumer electronics, and all of it loses value immediately. All of it becomes outdated. All of it ends up in a drawer or a landfill. I bought my first computer in the early 80s, and I used it until it literally didn't work anymore. It did what I needed it to do. And when I finally replaced it, I bought something practical, something functional, not something impressive. This isn't about being cheap. This isn't about depriving yourself. It's about understanding the difference between a tool and a toy. If you need a phone to communicate, to work, to function in modern life, of course you should have one. But you don't need the newest one. You don't need the premium version. You need something that works. And the money you save by making that distinction, by being rational instead of emotional about these purchases, that money compounds. That money grows. That money becomes your freedom later. Then there's food, and this is where I see waste on a scale that's hard to believe. Not food at the grocery store necessarily, though there's waste there too. I'm talking about restaurants, takeout, delivery apps, coffee shops, all the eating and drinking we do outside our homes because it's convenient, because we're tired, because we deserve a treat, because everyone else is doing it. I read somewhere that the average American spends over $3,000 a year dining out. $3,000. That's $250 a month. For many families, it's much higher than that. And I understand the appeal. I understand that after a long day of work, the last thing you want to do is cook. I understand that going out to eat is social, it's enjoyable, it's a break from routine, but you have to understand what it's costing you. Not just in dollars spent today, but in wealth you'll never build. If you're spending $3,000 a year dining out and you cut that in half, just in half, and you invested that $1,500 a year at 10%, over 30 years, you'd have nearly $270,000. That's not even eliminating dining out. That's cutting it by 50%. That's cooking at home 3 or 4 nights a week instead of 1 or 2. That's bringing lunch to work instead of buying it every day. That's making coffee at home instead of stopping at the coffee shop. These aren't radical changes. These aren't sacrifices that make life miserable. These are just small adjustments in behavior, small delays in gratification that create massive differences over time. But people don't make these adjustments because dining out doesn't feel like a wealth destroyer. It feels normal. It feels like something everyone does. And that's exactly the problem. The things that keep people poor are the things that feel completely reasonable, completely justified, completely standard. No one looks at someone going to a restaurant and thinks that person is making a financial mistake. But over a lifetime, it is. Not the occasional dinner out, not the celebration meal, but the habitual, constant, unthinking spending on convenience food because you didn't plan, because you didn't prepare, because it was easier. And finally, there's something that might surprise you, something that isn't as obvious as cars or houses or phones or restaurants. It's the small subscriptions, the little recurring charges, the streaming services and gym memberships and apps and subscriptions boxes, and all the tiny amounts of money that leave your account every month automatically so regularly that you stop noticing them. $10 here, $15 there, $20 for this, $30 for that. Individually, they seem insignificant. What's $10 a month? It's nothing. But when you add them all up, when you look at what people are actually spending on these recurring charges, it's often $200, $300, sometimes $500 a month. And it never ends. It just keeps charging month after month, year after year for services people often don't even use anymore but can't be bothered to cancel. I've seen studies showing the average person has subscriptions they don't even remember signing up for. They're payee. NG for things they're not using. It's invisible wealth destruction. Let's say you're spending $250 a month on various subscriptions. Most people are. And let's say you cut that down to just $50 a month, keeping only the 1 or 2 services you really use and value. That's $200 a month you freed up, $2,400 a year. If you invest that at 10% annually over 30 years, you'll have $450,000, nearly $500,000 from canceling subscriptions, from paying attention to where your money is going, from making conscious decisions instead of just letting charges run on autopilot. This is what I mean when I say people stay poor because of everyday purchases. It's not one big mistake. It's 1,000 small ones. It's the car payment and the oversized house and the premium phone and the constant dining out and the forgotten subscriptions, all happening at once, all pulling money away from your future, all making it impossible to build wealth no matter how hard you work or how much you earn. And the psychology behind all of this, the reason people make these choices, it's not complicated. We want to feel good now. We want to feel successful now. We want to enjoy life now. And we tell ourselves we'll worry about the future later. We tell ourselves we work hard and we deserve these things. We tell ourselves life is short and we should enjoy it. And all of that sounds reasonable. All of that feels true. But the math doesn't care about feelings. The math doesn't care about intentions. The math just shows you what happens when you spend instead of save, when you consume instead of invest, when you prioritize appearance over accumulation. I've been investing for over 70 years now, and the one lesson that stands above all others is this: compound interest, the most powerful force in building wealth. And it works both ways. When you invest money, it compounds in your favor. Your money makes money, and that money makes money. And over decades, it grows into something substantial. But when you spend money, especially when you borrow money to spend, it compounds against you. You pay interest on debt. You lose the returns you could have earned. You dig yourself deeper instead of climbing higher. The people who achieve financial independence, who build real lasting wealth, they're not usually the highest earners. They're the people who understand this principle. They're the people who can delay gratification. They're the people who can see past what everyone around them is doing and make decisions based on where they want to be in 20 or 30 years, not where they want to appear to be today. And I'll tell you something else I've noticed. The people who spend the most on looking wealthy are usually the people with the least actual wealth. They're driving luxury cars they can barely afford to impress people who don't care. They're living in houses that stretch their budget to the breaking point to have an address that sounds prestigious. They're wearing expensive clothes and carrying expensive accessories to signal success they haven't actually achieved. It's all facade. It's all performance. And behind closed doors, they're stressed about money constantly. They can't sleep. They can't handle emergencies. They're trapped in jobs they hate because they can't afford to leave. That's not wealth. That's a prison. Real wealth is freedom. It's options. It's security. It's being able to make decisions based on what you want to do, not what you have to do to make the next payment. And you build that kind of wealth slowly, patiently, consistently by living below your means and investing the difference. It's not exciting. It won't impress your neighbors. Nobody's going to congratulate you for driving a used car or living in a modest house or making coffee at home. But in 30 years, in 40 years, when your neighbors are still working because they have to and you're not because you don't have to, you'll understand. You'll see that every small decision mattered. Every dollar you didn't spend frivolously became part of your foundation. Every time you chose patience over instant gratification, you were building something real. The hardest part about this path is that it's lonely at first. You'll watch people around you buying things you can't justify buying. You'll feel left out. You'll feel like you're missing something. You'll question whether you're being too cautious, too cheap, too focused on some distant future that might never come. But you have to trust the process. You have to trust the math, because the math doesn't lie. And what the math shows is that small amounts of money saved and invested consistently over long periods of time become large amounts of money, not through luck, not through genius, not through taking wild risks, just through patience and discipline and letting compound interest do what it does. I've never tried to hit home runs with money. I've just tried to avoid striking out. I've tried to make good decisions more often than bad ones. I've tried to think long term when everything around me was focused on the short term. And that approach, boring as it sounds, has worked remarkably well. So if you take nothing else from this, take this. Every perch ASE you make is a choice between your present and your future. Every dollar you spend is a dollar that can't compound and grow. And while you should absolutely enjoy your life, while you should spend money on things that truly matter to you and bring you genuine happiness, you have to be honest about what those things actually are. Most of what we buy doesn't make us happier. Most of what we buy just makes us more comfortable with being average. And if you want different results than average people get, you have to make different choices than average people make. You have to be willing to look like you have less so you can build more. You have to be willing to delay gratification so you can have real security later. You have to understand that the appearance of wealth and actual wealth are not just different things, they're opposite things. One is all outflow, all performance, all keeping up. The other is patience, accumulation, compound growth, happening quietly in the background while you live a good, modest, reasonable life. The choice is yours to make every single day with every purchase, large and small. And those choices, repeated over decades, will determine whether you spend your life working for money or whether money eventually works for you. That's the difference. That's what matters. And that's what most people figure out too late, if they figure it out at all.